Good evening from the PCT. So I am about at the halfway point of my hike, and so I thought in honor of the halfway point, I would finally answer the questions that you guys have asked me. I'm sorry this took so long for me to make this video. I asked you guys for questions probably 3 weeks ago. I'm just now getting around to answering them, and I do apologize for that. I've just been doing much bigger miles lately, often hiking until dark or almost dark. When I go to towns, I'm scrambling to resupply and get myself clean and rested and get all my videos uploaded. So I just haven't felt like I had the extra time to do it, but I'm camping by myself tonight and I'm at camp before dark. I'm waiting for my dinner to finish rehydrating. So I thought this would be a great time to finally answer those questions. So thank you so much to everyone who sent in questions, and also just to everyone who's following along on my hike and wishing me well and leaving comments. I'm so sorry that I can't reply to all of the comments right now. I just don't have the capacity to keep up with them at the moment, like while I'm doing all this hiking, obviously, and out on the trail. But genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate if you're following along. Thank you so much. If you sent in a question, thank you so much. I wish that I could easily figure out how to put the text up of who asked the question and what the question is. But again, I'm just in the middle of nowhere right now, no cell phone service. So I've just taken screenshots of the questions. So I'm just going to rapid fire, put the questions out, answer them, and I just can't, do anything fancy. But if you did ask a question, thank you. I really appreciate you. So without further ado, let's get into this Q&A about hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and my Carson City to Canada quest. First question, how do you have time to edit your videos? And what equipment have you brought out on the trail, both for hiking and for making your videos? Okay, so I edit in my tent every single night. I try very hard not to get behind on my videos. It has happened. There have been a couple of times where I've gotten behind by a few videos. And in that case, I'll finish the editing when I get to town and catch up. But I really try to do it every single day so that I don't fall behind, because if I fall behind, it starts to get overwhelming, and then I'm afraid I'm going to forget things that I want to say. So I try to do it every night. I use an app called InShot. It's on my phone, so it makes it very easy. What gear do I have on the PCT? So I have a video about all the gear that I brought out with me for hiking. It's at the beginning of my PCT playlist. I'll also try to remember to link it below here, but it's just a rapid fire of every piece of equipment that I brought out on the PCT with me. And once I'm done with the PCT, I do plan to make a video on how the gear worked for me. So you can stay tuned for that too. And what gear do I use for for making my videos? I'm using just my iPhone, and I have a selfie stick that I use really regularly. I have an octopus tripod that just wraps around my trekking pole. And then I also have a little Rode microphone, but I find that I just can't use that very often because it's such a pain. Like, I just don't have the time. If I'm hiking and I want to say something, I just can't get that thing out every time. And I've also had a few times where I've used it and it's failed. So then I've been chatting for a few minutes and then the sound hasn't worked at all. So it's kind of a pain. And I know, I'm sorry, some of you guys do complain about the sound in my videos. I'm doing my best. I'm in the wilderness and I'm doing my best. That's all I can say. Next question, how do you keep everything charged, and how often do you get to town where you can top everything up? So I have 2 power banks. They're Anchor brand. They are both the 20,000 of whatever unit of measurement they use for these. They're not ultra light, that's for sure. They're quite heavy, but I find I really need 2 of these because, doing videos, obviously, that takes a lot of your battery. Anytime that you have cell phone service out here, it's usually poor cell phone service. So your phone is working very hard to get you service. So that drains your battery. I also use wireless headphones. And I also have a Garmin InReach Mini that needs to stay charged up. So yeah, I just find that 1 of these is not enough for me. But 2 lasts me over a week. I have not run out of battery yet out here, knock on wood. And I get to a town, I mean, it definitely depends on the week, but I would say it's typical to go to a town once a week. If I get to go twice a week, that's a special treat. But yeah, I would say typically once a week. Sometimes a little less. Next question. I'm confused about what the Carson City to Canada quest is. Can you talk about that? Sure. And I, since you guys have asked these questions, I did already go to Carson City and make a video on it again. And that's a more in-depth video. So go back and look for that if you're curious in learning more. But the short version of the story is last year, Visit Carson City ran a contest and they said that they would pay 2 people $5,000 each to hike from Carson City to Canada via a new trail that they built and completed in 2023 called the Capital to Tahoe Trail. It connects the Carson City trail system with the Tahoe Rim Trail. And so that, of course, the Tahoe Rim Trail is connected to the PCT. So the point of the Carson City to Canada quest is to hike from Carson City to Canada via the Capital to Tahoe Trail, the Tahoe Rim Trail, and the PCT. I am allowed to take alternate trails if I would like. For example, I asked them up front if I could take like the Crater Lake Blue Line because everyone says that that's a more interesting and exciting trail than the PCT. But loosely, I had to hike definitely on the Capital to Tahoe Trail, and then I have to loosely at least follow the Tahoe Rim Trail and the PCT. And of course, most of the time I am on the PCT, but just to give a little clarity about the rules. So from Carson City to Canada, it's about 1,600 miles. And I did hike the first 1,100 miles of the PCT before I got to Carson City, but that was just a bonus, okay? That was just a bonus. The desert and the Sierra on the PCT, just a bonus. So Visit Carson City last year, they invited people to apply. You had to send in an application along with a 1-minute video explaining why you would be the perfect person to hike from Carson City to Canada. I was one of 2 people chosen. The other person is a girl named Julianne. She also lives in Colorado, but on the other side. And you can find her on Instagram and TikTok at Wild Jules. One of those is spelled with a Y, like W-Y-L-D, and one is, I think, just the normal spelling. So you can look her up if you want to follow her as well. But that's the Carson City to Canada quest. I had another question about the Carson City to Canada quest, and that was, where do you get off the trail to go then start that adventure? So I got off at the Echo Summit area, so that's in the South Lake Tahoe area. It's where the PCT meets Highway 50. So my brother actually came out to visit me like during this time. So we went and spent a day in Tahoe. We spent 3 days in the Carson City area. So I got a little vacation before I actually started the Carson City to Canada quest. So he picked me up at Echo Summit and then brought me to Carson City. And then I hiked back to the PCT via the Capital to Tahoe Trail and the Tahoe Rim Trail, and then continued northbound on the PCT from Echo Summit. It would have been quicker to go the northern route on the Tahoe Rim Trail. I went the southern route, but I didn't want to miss any PCT miles, and very specifically, I didn't want to miss the Desolation Wilderness, and I would have missed the Desolation Wilderness had I gone northbound on the Tahoe Rim Trail. And I really loved that wilderness, so I'm really glad that I didn't miss it. Someone also asked, have you seen a bear yet? No, I haven't seen any bears on the PCT, not yet, but maybe in Oregon or Washington. Next question, did you cover the permit process? No, I did not. This is another video I plan to make when I'm done hiking the PCT because it's kind of long and involved. The easiest way to get a permit is just sign up for the PCTA lottery in early October. They have 2 rounds where you can try to get a permit. One is usually late October, early November. One is in January. If you sign up for that lottery, they will send you a date and a time where you can get on and try to get your permit of choice, date of choice. If you don't get it in the first round, you can try again in the second round. And if you don't get it in the second round, you can try to look for cancellations. I actually had to get my permit in a special way because of this Carson City to Canada quest. I had local permits for the southern section of the trail, and then my long distance permit started at Echo Summit going to Canada once I got back on the trail from that Carson City to Canada quest. So because that involves several permits and it is kind of long and involved, I'd rather do a full video about that later. And I also feel like that could help people who don't get their date of choice during the PCTA lottery. So stay tuned for that. Next question, what are your best and worst memories on trail? This is a really good question, but it's a really tough one. The best memory, gosh, that's really tough. I would say, I guess just generally, I really loved the High Sierra section this time. And that was really special to me because I found it to be so challenging and really pushed my limits when I did it on the JMT in 2023, the John Muir Trail. And this time around, I felt like an old pro, and I watched all these other people get really freaked out by the snow and the passes. And I was just like, oh, I got this. I got this. And I felt so confident, and I got so much more confident with my route finding. And it was just a really special time. I really enjoyed it. And then, I really felt like the Sierra section of the PCT was so busy. There were so many people around all of the time. I was lucky to get an hour to myself during the day. And then in the High Sierra section, Pickles and I hardly saw any other people. And the people that we did see, we felt like we were really able to connect with because there weren't a million people around all the time. And so I just really felt like that whole section was so special, and I really, really enjoyed it. I know that's maybe a cop-out for your best memory on the trail, but maybe I'll have a better, more solid answer by the end of the whole thing. But right now, especially like hiking through Northern California, where so much of it has been burned and it's been so hot and so dusty, I'm like, oh, I miss the High Sierra. Oh, it was perfect hiking weather up there. You're doing these creek crossings where you cooled down. It was just a really nice time. Worst memory on the trail. I mean, luckily, I don't have anything that really stands out, at least yet. So that's a really good thing. Obviously, like, I haven't gotten sick, knock on wood. I haven't gotten injured, knock on wood. I have had some rough nights of sleep with heavy winds and things like that. So that was tough, but nothing honestly too bad at all. I have not loved the burn sections recently. So there was a really big wildfire that came through Northern California a few years ago, called the Dixie Fire. And apparently it burned 1.4 million acres or something like that, like just insane. And so I walked through these burned forests in 90-degree weather for days. And I can't say that I loved that. But I do think there's value in it to see the destruction and what can happen if we're not careful. And, I do see the value in it, but it was tough and really, really tough on motivation for sure. Okay, next question. Would you be willing to meet up with fans in a safe place? First of all, that's adorable that you would say I have fans. This, by the way, is an amazing woman named Amber, who I now have already met. And so she wanted to know if I would meet up with people in a safe space. So we did meet up. We went to dinner. She showed me all around Quincy. It was incredible. Like, nicest person ever. I got to meet her kids. She brought me snacks. Like, what a sweetheart. But so to answer the question, yes, I do. I like to meet up with people along the way. I think it's fun. Obviously not looking to put myself in any dangerous situations, but if it's, in a public place and, people seem cool, like, yeah, I'm definitely willing to meet up with people. I think that's part of the fun, is meeting locals along the way and getting to know the towns. So yes. Next question, I want to know where you got those adorable bathing suits. Okay, so my trail name is Glow Stick. I don't know if you all know that. So I wanted to dress in bright colors to really reflect my trail name, and that included my bathing suits. And so I've had two bathing suits. One was a one piece. I just found it wasn't very practical, so I switched to a bikini. They're both from a company called Popfill, which makes bathing suits in really bright neon colors. So yeah, Popfill. And thank you for the compliment. Which part of the trail are you most looking forward to from this point on? Definitely Washington. I went and hiked the Wonderland Trail in Washington a couple of years ago. It circles Mount Rainier. It's like a 90-mile trail. And I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite hikes I've ever done. And I just really want to explore more of Washington. So I'm so pumped for that part of the trail. And I hope I get there before it gets cold and snowy. Next question. I'm looking for a review of the trail between Carson City and the PCT. I imagine it's pretty steep. Okay, so the trail, the first big trail that I got on was the Capital to Tahoe Trail. So that connects the Carson City trail system to the Tahoe Rim Trail. So it did start down in Carson Valley, and it did hike up to the alpine of the Tahoe Rim Trail. I think it's alpine forest anyway. So it was a few thousand feet of elevation gain for sure, but it was graded really nicely. So it's a multi-use trail, so it's meant for hikers and bikers. And so I didn't, even though it was a few thousand feet of elevation gain just in one day, it definitely felt very doable. Sorry, I think I'm getting a bit by some kind of insect. It felt very doable, and it wasn't too crazy or anything. It wasn't very steep, to be honest. It was just climbing all day, basically, to get back up to the Tahoe Rim Trail. So that was a really nice trail. It was just built in 2023, or just completed in 2023, so it's been maintained very well. I started hiking it on a weekday, so there weren't a ton of other people out, which was a really nice change from a lot of the busy parts of the PCT. It was a really nice trail. It was kind of interesting because it was like popping back down into the desert and climbing back up to the alpine. So it was like, oh, I thought I was done with the desert and here I am back in it, but it wasn't for very long. And it was fun to watch the ecosystem change and the landscape change as I was climbing up. And I got some great views of Carson City and the Carson Valley, and there were a lot of wildflowers. So it was really nice. I didn't love the east side of the Tahoe Rim Trail, to be honest with you. It was hot, it was exposed, there were a lot of pointless ups and downs, and there were long water carries. So that was not my favorite. Also, there were a lot of bikes. So bikers can use the east side of the Tahoe Rim Trail as well. And apparently, I've since learned that there are suggested days for bikers and hikers, but, kind of hard to pay attention to that when you're on a thru hike, of course. But, yeah, I didn't super love that side of it. There were some great views, for sure, beautiful views of Lake Tahoe, but it was really hot, and I was really thirsty, so that was tough. Once the Tahoe Rim Trail joined the PCT, that section, the west side of the Tahoe Rim Trail, gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. No bikers. I went through the Desolation Wilderness, which was just incredible. Loved it. So, I mean, that certainly made up for it if you're interested in the Tahoe Rim Trail. I wouldn't let the east side scare you. But yeah, overall, I mean, I thought it was a great add-on to my overall PCT adventure. It was fun to go off and see another area that I wouldn't have otherwise seen. And it was also fun because I got to go on a little vacation with my brother. So it was cool. Oh, I realized I missed one question, which was, are you allowed to bring bear spray? So I actually had to look into this. I wasn't sure. I don't use bear spray except in grizzly country. There's only black bears on the PCT, and black bear attacks on people are pretty rare. All the black bears that I've ever seen have pretty much just been running away from me in terror. And what I worry about more is proper food storage. I do, when I'm in Colorado, I do bring pepper spray out on the trail with me. But of course, I flew out to California, so I couldn't bring it. And then different states have different regulations on whether you can use pepper spray and bear spray and all that. So definitely, if you're going to use any of those things, look up the regulations in your state or the state that you're going to go. But specifically with bear spray, I learned that you are not allowed to have bear spray in Yosemite, Kings Canyon, Sequoia, and Lassen Volcanic National Parks. So I guess the answer is no, you can't have bear spray, at least on the entire PCT. It is legal in California, so generally, I think a lot of areas you probably could have it in California, but again, you'd have to look up the regulations because you're going through so many different jurisdictions like national parks and wilderness areas and national forests. So you'd have to really look into where you're allowed to have it and where you're not. So I don't know. Hopefully that answers your question. Next question, how is your gear holding up? I wouldn't say it's doing great. Would not say that. My tent is having some issues. The zipper is splitting and all the guy lines, basically the main guy lines, need to be replaced. Not thrilled with that. I'm about to send it in for repair to Z-Packs. I'm about to get a new pack from Gossamer Gear because mine is falling apart. But huge thank you to the Gossamer Gear customer service. You're amazing. Thank you so much. I've already had to get a new sleeping pad because I put a big hole in mine by having a little twig in my tent that I didn't know about. It seems like all of my zippers are not working the way they should. I guess because of the California dust. Yeah, my gear is it's not holding up great. I'll also probably make a video about this after I finish the PCT. So stay tuned for that as well. Okay, I think that was all of the questions I had for now. So I will try to do another one of these videos when I'm finished with the PCT. Honestly, just doing a lot of bigger miles lately and trying to make it to Canada before the snow comes in and before Pickles' visa runs out. So I'm probably not going to have the time to do another one before I'm finished. But thanks again to anyone who asked questions. And I will solicit questions again after the hike is over. Stay tuned as I hike the rest of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington. Thanks again so much for being here and following along with my PCT adventure. It's very much appreciated. And I do apologize that I really can't keep up with the comments right now, but I really appreciate you guys following along. Okay, all right. Well, that's all. I'll talk to you later.